Hi everybody, James Tierney with Tierney Education here, going to go over an example on how to calculate nominal and real GDP along with the real GDP growth rate. Be sure to head on over to tierneyeducation.com for more resources or to schedule a free consultation with me if you're having any trouble in your economics class. Let's start by reading the instructions. You are given the following data about 4 different goods: coffee, coffee beans, which are used entirely to make coffee, have no other use in this economy, rulers, and index cards. The price and quantities produced are given over a 2-year period. There's something very important there, which is that the coffee beans have no other use in the economy, meaning they are an intermediate good. Sorry, that cut off a little bit there. And that means it's not going to be included in the production. So we can just get rid of that value. Now you might say, hey, these numbers don't make any sense. Coffee beans, $25, and we're only selling coffee. Yeah, don't worry about if numbers make sense. This is just practice on how we go about and calculate real and nominal GDP. Now that we have read the question and we know what we need to include and not include, let's go ahead and calculate nominal GDP. We'll do it for the year 2011 first. And so nominal GDP, you have to use the same price and quantity. So if I was doing the nominal GDP of 2011, I'm using prices and quantity of year 11. We don't have to worry about a base year at all for nominal. That's something you really want to make sure you know. So I need to find the value of production. Well, we start with coffee. We know that there were 25 units of coffee times $3. And then we also know that there were 30 units of rulers. And we know those were $2, so that's the value that rulers gives us. And we know there are 15 index cards, and that was for $5, and that's the value that index cards has added to production. We can do our math here, and we see that this is going to be $75 for coffee. We see it was $60 added to the value for the economy for rulers, and we see $75 added when it comes to index cards, which equals $210. So $210 is the nominal GDP in 2011. Let's change up the color slightly for the nominal GDP of 2012. Notice when you're changing the year for nominal GDP, you're going to change everything. We're going to prices and quantities of that year. Do the exact same process. We see that there were 28 units of coffee being sold at $3. We see that there were 35 units of rulers. Now they're sold at $2.25. And we see that there are still 15 units of index cards being sold at $5.50. I'm going to have to use my calculator to figure this out. And what we get is $84 for coffee. Rulers added $78.75, and we see that index cards added $82.50. All of these are dollar values because we know nominal GDP is represented in the currency that we're calculating. Again, using a calculator, we can find the value here, which is equal to $245.25. And there you go. That is how we calculate the nominal GDP for this type of question. Let's move on to calculating the real GDP. With real GDP, if we're doing real GDP, it's important to know what the base year is. And so I gave the base year here is 2011. I know it's cut off a little bit, but that's 2011 as the base year. So you have to remember that if I'm trying to find the real GDP in 2011, then I'm going to use 2011's quantities for sure, because you're always using the same year quantity. But then we need to use the prices in the base year. So it's same year quantity, base year prices. But what we know here is that real GDP in 2011, if the base year is 2011, then I know the real GDP is going to equal the nominal GDP because you're doing the same thing, right? You are using, if we look up here, the quantities and prices in 2011, and that's exactly what we did for nominal GDP. So we can save some time, and we can just say that this is going to be equal to $210. Now let's change colors slightly, a little darker color here to look at real GDP in the year 2012. Now we need to use the quantities in 2012 because you always use the same quantities. However, we are back to the prices in 2011 because the base year is 2011. This is where a lot of students mix up, so make sure you remember real GDP. We're looking for real changes in the production of economy, so the prices are fixed. Remember, real GDP, prices are fixed. That's the important thing to remember. So we're going to take the quantities in 2012, which we focused on up here. So we've got 28 for coffee. But the prices are going to come back here for 2011. So that will be $3. We'll do the same thing when we're looking at rulers. We saw there were 38 produced in 2012, but the price was only $2 back in 2011. We'll do the same thing for index cards where there were 15 produced and it was $5 back in 2011. Again, the most important thing here, prices are fixed, so we're staying in 2011 because that's the base year, but we're still looking at quantities in the year that we are looking for. Again, we can use our calculator and we see that this is going to be $84 is the real value in 2012 for coffee. We see it's $70 for rulers, and we see it's $75 for index cards. When we add that all up, we see the real value added to the economy through this production was $229 for the year 2012. Again, this was using 2012 quantity, 2011 prices, because the base year was 2011. That's the most difficult part of this type of question, making sure that you can calculate real and nominal GDP correctly. So let's do the last two parts of this question, which I know we can get through very quickly. Let's start with the deflator. So the GDP deflator, remember the equation for deflator is nominal GDP divided by real GDP times 100. You can always remember that nominal starts with an N, and so it's always in the numerator. You can remember it that way. I know that my deflator, I'm just going to denote it as a capital D, my deflator in 2011, because that is the base year, right? We know the base year is 2011. That's going to equal to 100. And I'm just going to prove it here for you. Remember, nominal GDP was 210 in 2011. So was real GDP times 100. 210 divided by 210. 210 goes into 210 one time. That cancels out, becomes a 1. And so that's where we get the 100 for the deflator for 2011. I'll use a little bit of work over here. It might be a little small. You can always stop this video and check it out. Deflator for 2012. Well, now we got to take nominal, which was 245.25. We divide that by the real, which was 229, times that whole thing by 100. We'll use our calculator here and round to 1 decimal place, I think is what I'm asking for. And so we end up getting 107.1. That's going to be our deflator. Note that there are no units on this. This is just a number. It's an index. We'll go over in a different video what that exactly means. Last but certainly not least, we are going to look at the real growth rate. Remember, the real growth rate, denoted lowercase g, is going to be my percentage change in the real GDP. We're still using 2011 as the base year, so we can keep all the numbers we've been using so far. But if you have your own problem set, or you have your own quiz, or you have your own exam, make sure you're double checking what the base year is every single time. So the growth rate is just gonna be percentage change. So we take our second value, which was 229. We subtract our first value, which was 210. So we're using real GDP, so that's part B. Second value minus the first value, just as a reminder, and then divide that by the first value times 100. Make sure you know how to use percentage change. It's a very important idea in macroeconomics. We simplify this down, meaning that our numerator is going to be 19, which was my change, divided by my 210 times 100. We'll use a calculator here. Again, we'll want 1 decimal place, which is in the directions. Always read your directions. And so we'll get the growth rate between these years to be 9.0%. So there you have it. A quick instructional video on how to calculate nominal GDP when you're given some data, real GDP. We also looked at the GDP deflator and calculating the real growth rate. Some last minute tips: always read your instructions. Make sure you write everything out before you start using your calculator. And make sure you have in the back of your head exactly what nominal GDP, real GDP, the deflator, and the growth rate is. Stay tuned for some more videos on this topic, and make sure that you are following and subscribing to Tierney Education.